Hello and welcome.
Welcome, Dave.
No, I welcome you. You can't welcome me, I welcomed you. Let's start it over again. Ready? This is why I stay behind the camera.
You look like Robert De Niro from this angle.
I've gotten
got a mole in the same exact location.
so many different celebrity lookalikes, and it's almost never the same person twice. Isn't that weird? I have a face that depending on which angle you look at me, I look like this person, that person, the other person. But if you look directly at my entire face, you're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk some New Joke City. I thought it would be nice because we have the release of the series coming out to just kind of go back to the beginning and tell the story, executive producer style. This is one of those DVD extra features right now. Very exciting. Speaking of going back in time.
I did comedy back in the 90s, right? For about 3 years, I did stand-up. Then I became a civilian, and I got married, had a child, and got a regular job. I guess about 5.5 years ago or so, when my daughter was graduating high school, I was no longer coaching sports, no longer driving her everywhere, and I had all this available time. So a comedy club came to Suffer, New York. I got curious about it and went there and met the owner and the people involved, and I just on a whim, I thought, I'm going to put together 5 minutes of material. So for this 5.5 year long, obsession with stand-up has become a little bit more than a hobby. Along the way, I guess a couple years ago, I'm just I became very intrigued about what drives comics, whether it's a traumatic past, whether they were a class clown. No one has the same story, It's always interesting to me how they got into it, and people say oh, you're so brave, and I don't think it's bravery at all. But the number one social fear amongst people is public speaking, right? And
I thought it was showing up to school with no clothes on.
That probably runs a close second.
Fair.
If you're doing stand-up comedy and no one's laughing, then you're public speaking.
Yes.
So the joke is, you can buy me drinks after my stand-up or my public speaking, but I charge a little bit more for public speaking, so you might as well laugh. That's interviewing comics seemed to be a no-brainer about where they get the inspiration. And then the other component is them busking comedy. Back in the 80s, when I lived in New York City, Charlie Barnett was a famous Washington Square stand-up comedian. Do 10 shows a day, thousands of people watching him, and I just thought it was a crazy phenomenon, this guy doing stand-up. Because, and I figure any art can be performed in public. Right?
Yes.
And I don't think stand-up comedy should be an exception. And
at its most basic, of course not.
Yeah, on our show, it kind of just adds to the whole, overall picture of the comic. And I liked contrasting that with them doing, sets, doing jokes in their home environment.
In their element, yes.
In their element.
In controlled circumstances, because I think that it's funny. You might consider a crowd one night in a club, a raucous crowd, to be like a rough crowd one night, or a quiet crowd in another club in another night. But then you go completely outside the club and you realize it's a totally different level of
crowds
craziness.
Are funny. Crowds are really so definable. They're all individually odd, and and I do announcing at Rhino Comedy on Saturday nights. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Rhino Comedy. Please put your hands together for tonight's host of your festivities, Ryan Patrick.
Woo.
I can gauge a crowd's participation when I just say, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Rhino Comedy. And several times it's silence. I'm like, oh shit,
Here we go. Right.
They're really going to need to be, kick-started. And it's really going to be dependent on the host to get them, because if they don't laugh at that first pause, you've got your work cut out for you. But they can be manipulated by the humor.
Do you remember the first time you saw Ryan Patrick host?
Yeah. I think he hosted the first time the open mic. He hosts all the time now, but he hosted the open mic. And he was, he's a pretty unique stand-up. I do a joke where I say Ryan Patrick's in the house tonight. That means my heterosexual quotient has gone from 89% down to 72. He's very crowd friendly. He doesn't have a put down element that that some comics do. He's very easy on crowds, but he gets no less laughs. He doesn't have like a...
There's no insult in his comedy.
Yeah, there's no insult in his comedy. He really, just wins people over with love and not this acerbic kind of, challenging thing. He doesn't roast crowds, he doesn't, he's just got a very easygoing, quality to his...
And we like, at New Joke City, we like doing things that other people aren't doing. And it seems like maybe the insult comedy, maybe the aggressive thing has saturated the market a little bit. Maybe that there's enough of that where, him just being himself is where he's winning.
Yeah, definitely society has become, a little bit meaner.
Sure, and I think that everyone's temperament has gotten to that, sort of like you said, everything has to be a roast now. There's everybody's battling and roasting and this and that, and it's potentially refreshing to audiences to have somebody who's just going up there being themselves and trying to be funny.
Yeah, I did a roast a few years ago, and of course, my opponent was quite young, and and he's like, "You remind me of a burned out comic from the '80s whose best bit was a bad Jack Nicholson impersonation," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, you probably smoke a lot of weed." My comebacks are so lame. You might live with your mother. But
I can't be sure of that.
Yeah, you got me.
Right. I think that's actually true. He's right.
And it's funny because these roasts for just everyman comedians, a roast came from roasting a celebrity who had gotten too big for his own,
right? Somebody who you could actually talk about.
You needed to cut him down to size.
Right.
He needed some comeuppance, right?
Right.
And now,
and it was reserved. It was an honor.
But now you've got like open micers putting each other down, and I'm thinking like, there should probably be a suicide counselor in the club.
It's they're disguising insulting each other as a roast.
Right, exactly.
It's called a roast. Oh, don't worry, it's a roast. I didn't really mean that you're not funny and that you're really ugly.
Yeah.
No, it's gone too much, and so maybe like inadvertently, because it's nothing affected. Ryan is just a nice guy. He's just like, that's just his temperament. So he's not putting anything on. And it just might so happen that he's refreshing because he's refreshing. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool. And I remember that when you approached me with the idea for New Joke City, you mentioned the busking and you mentioned it's got to be Ryan as the host.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Like, what was it about him? Like, what about Ryan in his hosting did you see that you knew this was the guy?
Well, he's got a great curiosity, and Ryan hasn't been doing comedy for decades. He's relatively, you'd never know it because he's a total pro, and he's just getting better and better at it, and he's getting booked more and more. Mm-hmm. He has a curiosity that I thought was very important. about it, and it shows, I think, in his interviews. It really showed in the Eddie Brill interview.
Yep.
You know, he's got this kind of wide-eyed, you know, he's enamored of the art of it, and he wants to keep getting better. And he's fairly prolific. He writes a lot. He's always trying new stuff, and he's just an engaging guy. And he's easy on the eyes.
That's true. That's true. You did mention your heterosexuality quotient. The one thing that you mentioned to me that you said first, and then I learned about him after that, and it's so true. He's a host who really, really listens.
Yeah.
Very often, the host is waiting for their next turn to speak, the next turn to ask a question, the next turn to get to the next point, whatever that might be. And even in a comedy show, the host of the show might very often, okay, you just saw this comedian. I'm going to tell a minute worth of jokes, and I'm going to tell you about the next comedian now. Ryan listens to the comedian who's on stage. He will come on stage, he'll bring the comedian off stage, and before he brings the next comedian on, he'll refer to that prior comedian's set. He'll make a joke about one of their jokes. He'll make some sort of reference
Absolutely.
that brings that set into the room even. And
he'll piggyback off the previous comic.
He doesn't just wait for his chance to speak. He's really thoughtfully listening and giving you something back, both on stage as a host and in the show as a host. And it's something you told me right away, and I could see it just coming out more and more.
It's like free comedy. It's like, you know, you can get, it's free laughs, because if someone has been referred to, if a couple, you know, said they met on OkCupid, you know, or something, you know, you should reference it if it's applicable. If it's, you know, if someone has an odd profession that they've mentioned, if a comedian said something about, you know, something that strikes a chord with you, you know, I think it makes the audience know that you've been paying attention too.
Right, that you're all there together.
Yeah, if you come on stage and you know, you just go right into your material, that's fine, you know, often, but if you have these wide targets that have been referred to just minutes earlier, you're doing yourself a disservice not to do a short little bit about it, if you know.
And I think that as an audience member, like I don't do stand-up comedy, but if I see the comedian come on and reference something that just happened in real life, and I know that it's off the top of their head, or I can feel that it's something natural and it's normal, I'm like, wow, that person really is talented versus somebody who just has to go off their notes. You know, like if you can actually go in the moment. I think we had a couple of different of the comedians during the shows talk about if something happens in the room, you can't just ignore it and go on. If somebody drops a plate or something happens in the room, you can't just ignore it and go on. You have to acknowledge that you're all there in the room together. And so when a comedian can then reference something that happened in the room, I'm like, wow, that person, you know, that's like extra points to me as far as like a live comedian, to be like, wow, they really are quick on their feet. It's not just the material, you know, so that's something that's very, very respectable. And so when you brought that up as a strength of Ryan's, I knew that was super valuable as a host, and it bore itself out.
Yeah.
It was very, very cool. So I remember that the first episode we did was Monty. Mm-hmm. Right, and that was the first time we walked, the first time we like put all of these theories into action. Yeah, you know, it's like I think what we can do is I'm gonna have my camera pointing backwards. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. You know, we're doing hand signals. We're giving each other, you know, the eyebrow. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're doing the other thing. What do you remember about the first walk?
I remember not knowing exactly which direction we were going, and I was, you know, I'd often end up in the camera's lens. You know, I thought Monty had a lot of good energy, and I thought it was a good debut. It was like a promising thing. And I mean, all the comics we interviewed pretty much rose to the occasion.
I agree.
And the uniqueness of, you know, of doing a walk and talk and doing busking in various, you know, locations. It just lends itself to the happenstance of things, you know, good surprises, right, you know, that can occur when you're...
Real life happens when you're out there in real life.
Yeah.
You know, we put ourselves into situations we could not predict.
Right.
We did not know what was going to happen. You know, I did my research with regards to permitting and making sure that we were in the right and allowed to do the things we were allowed to do, you know.
Oh, we were so hung up on the permits.
Right. And it just ended up being nothing. It was just like, you know what? Let's just do the thing and see what happens. And we did the entire season and it was great and everything worked out wonderfully. And the fact is you don't need permits when you don't fix cameras to the ground, which we technically didn't do. So technically we were in the right, but as far as walking around, cruising around, I kind of expected that we would run into some trouble where we would have to be interrupted along our walk, which never happened. No. We just kind of cruised around, did our thing. We were able to, I mean, as you mentioned, maybe we would get to a corner and you'd go this way and I'd go that way sometimes. Or, you know, there's a couple of times when you could see you or you might see Maria in the shot during some of the episodes briefly because she's trying to run and keep up with us, which was great too. You know, she's dodging cars, she's going in and out. You know, we kind of had the easy job. I was just walking. You were walking, you had to pretty much walk backwards, but then Maria's, you know, doing like an obstacle course throughout Manhattan over cars and curbs and this and that to get the B-roll, but that was pretty amazing too. But yeah, we didn't really have any friction.
We took a trip to Manhattan before filming just to, you know, interview street performers and find out if they've had a, what was it called? It was a...
Some sort of permit, some sort of busking permit or something, and everybody was like, no, we don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually went to a police precinct and got paperwork. They, oh yeah, you need a permit to do that kind of stuff. It's like, okay. And that was bullshit.
Right, total bullshit. We went to every single person we talked to, they were like, no. Like, we were out here every day, it's fine. They were like, we never get bothered, so we just were like, you know what, let's just do this. And yeah, it worked.
It also helps that we have, we use a speaker sound system that amplifies the, you know.
Yeah, that was fun, figuring out how to build
the material, I think, is better delivered. You're not, because otherwise it's too street preachery, you know.
Oh yeah, you just got a guy yelling, you know. And plus, I don't think that would be as appealing for the performers. Frankly.
And that's one of the things I thought that gave me an idea was the image of this. I saw this guy in Midtown. He's got a hand truck with an amplifier and a mic stand and a mic. Mm-hmm. That's all that was on his hand truck. And I said, street preacher or comic, you know. And
that was the genesis for the show.
Then that brought me back to thinking about Charlie Barnett.
And then when you first brought the idea
Rest
to me.
in peace.
There you go. Yeah, shout out Charlie Barnett in the Washington Square Park fountain that was not full of water, but full of like junk
it was garbage.
And he would just perform.
That fountain was dormant, full of trash the entire time I lived in New York City in the 80s.
And we did 2 of our episodes in Washington Square Park. One of them went smoothly, one of them did not go smoothly. The fountain is beautiful and the park is actually filled with trash now. But that's a different story altogether. But yeah, no, you came to me with that picture that you just described, a guy with a car, he's either a preacher or he's a comic. And I said, yep, we can do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that, for sure. Well, how are we gonna, nope, well, don't worry about it. We're gonna do it. I'm gonna walk this way, you guys are gonna walk that way. I went on YouTube, as you do, and I learned how to make the actual busking setup, how to hook up the battery.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we got the little clips, the thing sparks every time. Every time we hooked that thing up, the comedian feature looked at me like I was insane. They were like, what is going on here? Because of course I'm pulling out this battery, I'm clipping the thing that's sparking, and they're like, is this for real? But it's literally for real. This is what real buskers do. Is it a car
battery?
Well, it's a vehicle. It's an equipment battery, but it's not an actual car battery. It's a different type of battery.
But it looks
for like a tractor, like a lawnmower, like a ride-on mower, like that type of a battery. It's not a car, but it's a vehicle, like a machine battery. Yeah. But it looks just like a car battery. It's very heavy. I just clip the little clamps onto the leads. It makes a spark, and then that converter converts that battery.
How long can that battery?
We never found out. It never ran out for us. I mean, we used it. That was the concern. At first, we were like, I wonder if it's going to work. I wonder if it's going to last. Not only did it work, but that thing lasts longer than we've ever needed it to last. We haven't really pushed it to its limit per se, like for over a long extended period of time. But I'm willing to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll have to see. We'll have to just do an outdoor show one day, and it just be like a marathon show. We go until the battery dies. Right. And then, we fire
There's
up the
no
grill.
gauge on it to show you
It's
life?
Rich. This thing is a battery with 2 clamps attached to it that's emitting sparks. There's no gauge to be seen anywhere in this place. The gauge was, do I feel up to doing this or not? I had to gauge my bravery when I was gonna actually try not to electrocute myself. But yeah, no, the way I put it together is very much bare bones, no frills. Can't touch it once it's clipped together because you might zap yourself, but it works great.
Wow.
Yeah, we're outside. That's how we go, because the great partnership that we had, you were like, what if this? Like, could we do this? And I'm like, I think we can. And so we just kind of like brainstormed back and forth, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did this? And I think that the great part of the partnership is that both of us were willing to just give it a shot, right? Like we were just like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Let's fucking try this, right? Which I think that's where a lot of people end up getting stuck, right? Because a lot of people have ideas, and a lot of people are like, wouldn't it be great if this was a show, or if that was a show? Oh, my job could be a show. Oh my goodness, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then to actually take that step and be like, let's do that leap of faith. Let's actually go and let's actually do it. Like,
yeah, because things. I mean, look, the time in the one at Union Square Park where we came upon the bird lady, when all those birds were feeding off her.
Literally.
Just thousands of birds.
Literally.
She's covered in birds. It was such a good backdrop and B-roll stuff.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
that, we couldn't have planned that.
No, and the way the birds flew up in the air when Gian came onto the stage, it was incredible.
Yeah,
it was like a curtain came up, but the curtain was made of pigeons.
And Rebecca's was like
Nudist colony.
New York City's nude day, and there was thousands of nude people marching, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're all painted, body painted colors.
Right.
They're all naked people just standing around like, "Hi, yes. Did you get a picture? Do you need me to move in any other angles?"
We didn't plan on there being thousands of nude people.
No,
but
it was great.
And then Dave Namery's episode.
We almost got in like 10 fights.
Yeah, Dave Namery's episode where the crowd was, he hadn't even said a joke and they were heckling him.
He didn't get through a single joke in that entire episode. Like for his entire set, he did like 5 minutes. He didn't do a single joke.
Yeah, but it was still a funny.
Oh my goodness! It was that was the one where I really did it. You can even see on camera where I just like, okay, this is not fun anymore. This might get serious. Where I kind of put my hands in my pockets, where I was like, if something happens here, I just gotta kind of manage the situation. Because as soon as the guy got physical with me, that's when you could see me put my hands in my pockets. I was like, all right, now we're not joking anymore. Let me just make sure that everything goes smoothly here. I expected us to get in more friction, honestly, than we did. We got in a lot of friction that day. I think we got enough friction that day for the whole series, for the whole season. Honestly, I didn't want any more, but I'm honestly surprised that we didn't have more.
Yeah.
Right? Because like New York, everybody's a wise ass, and we only ran into wise asses one day. But they were all together. They all happened to be hanging out together, watching our show. But we didn't get as much guff. It was pretty cool. We had the little sign on the front of the thing that says live episode being taped, and people would like walk by and be like, "Whoa, cool!" Who was that? We got a lot of do you know who those people were? People waving at the camera and stuff. So, I mean, it was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to getting out there on the street and doing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. What if you got to choose a city other than New York City to do another season in? What city would you choose?
Boston.
Yeah, I had a feling you were going to say Boston. Boston is a really. It seems like it's a very. It would be a really good city because it's really very walkable. It's cool looking. It's clean. It's kind of quiet, and I think the people are nicer than they are in New York.
And they also speak funny.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah, pretty much everything they say sounds hilarious.
Boston's an old comedy town,
Yeah. Yeah, Boston would be cool. I would love to do...
Eddie Brill came out of Boston.
I would love to do London. Yeah, that's my wish list town, London. Because I've never been there before. And that would be pretty cool to walk around there in London as well.
Dublin would be good too. Ooh. Dublin's a big comedy town.
Done. We could do London and Dublin. We'll just do like a whole overseas series. Love it. Well, you know what, Rich? Thank you so much for just taking a little bit of time going down memory lane. I'm very excited for the release of the series. Season 1 is going to debut on April Fool's Day. Very excited about that. You're going to be seeing a lot more stuff from us. But for now, Rich, congratulations on New Joke City, bro.
No, likewise.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your extra credit duty.
Don't worry about it, man. I had a lot of stuff to do, and we're just about there. But really, it's only just the start, right? We have a lot more coming.
Yeah.
It's gonna be cool.
You look like Robert De Niro from this angle. It's the hair. It's like the Taxi Driver era.
Fair enough. I'll take it.